Welcome back to Trucking with OOIDA. I'm Scott Thompson, joined by Ashley Blackford and Todd Spencer, President and CEO of OOIDA. Todd, we are going to talk here in just a moment with Steve Casstevens. He is a board member on the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks. He recently went to Washington, D.C. with some colleagues to talk about that issue. Before we get into it, how long has the issue, and again, we're kind of going back in time here, but the issue of bigger trucks and that push for bigger trucks, how long has this been going on? Or can you even count?
Well,
a while.
I'm going to say since before I got into trucking, that was a long time ago. So, and generally, or quite often, the push for bigger always comes at the shipper, the manufacturer, that level, as opposed to necessarily people in trucking. But there have been people in trucking that have advocated for as well. Now, I can tell you where prior to 1982, states had sole discretion about what their weight limits would be, and generally, from a state's perspective, that makes perfect sense to them because one state will say, well, look, this is we do it the perfect way and everybody else should emulate us.
Sure, of course, yeah.
Do the same as we do.
But what that creates is a patchwork of confusion,
but
right?
States don't do it. They do it, they take their own way. And my original entry into trucking was at a time when many states had 80,000-pound weight limits for a 5-axle truck. And there was a strip of states right through the center of the country from Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, right through the center of the country, and had 73,280 weight limits, while all the others had 80. And
it creates a few problems, doesn't it?
Well, It certainly challenges because shippers like to load maximum permissible weight limits for the state that they're in. And if it goes through one of these other states, they may or may not be terribly concerned about that. So it was always a challenge for truckers.
Yeah.
And of course, in those days, and that's only part of it. That I mentioned weight limits, but also in those days, states put length limits on how long trucks could be. That's overall length limit. Now, if you mentioned earlier the antique truck show.
Yeah.
Well, if you go to the antique truck show, you'll see plenty of cab over tractors.
Yep.
And there was a time when most of the trucks that were built were cab overs with fairly short wheelbases, and that's because states like Missouri and Illinois and Arkansas had 55-foot overall length limits. 55 foot, that's from the front of the bumper to the back of the trailer. You couldn't be longer than that.
Yep.
So because of those limitations, what would happen was that trailers would keep inching longer and longer and longer, and cabs would keep inching shorter.
It's like the walls are closing in on you.
Oh, yeah. So, the example we used to give back a million years ago now is that it was kind of like a trailer going down the road with a postage stamp on the front of it. That was a truck.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we don't have that problem anymore. But there is a new push in Congress to start a pilot program that would allow bigger, heavier trucks on interstates. OOIDA is among a coalition against bigger trucks, that is fighting back against that. And they recently sent a team to Capitol Hill to talk to lawmakers about this issue. And we talked to Steve Casstevens. Let's have a listen. Some things in life have a way of popping back up despite your best efforts. Mostly they're unpleasant things: cockroaches, dandelions, zombies in the movies. And for the past couple decades or so, one of the hardest pursuits to knock down in Congress, with regard to trucking at least, has been the push to allow bigger trucks on America's roadways. Seriously, it's got staying power. Do a quick search online and dozens of articles pop up dating back several years, and it's usually a similar request to the one frequently made by Congressman Dusty Johnson of South Dakota, who has made it clear he wants to increase the weight limit for commercial trucks to 91,000 pounds, up from the current level of 80,000 pounds. The congressman thinks it's a good idea for reasons we'll get into here in just a moment, but not everyone agrees.
I think this is a bad idea for a number of reasons.
Meet Steve Casstevens. He's opposed to letting bigger trucks on roadways, which means his fit on the board of directors for the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks, or CABT, is a good one. Casstevens spent more than 4 decades in law enforcement, is a retired police chief from Illinois, and past president of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. He and 8 of his colleagues from CABT made the trip to Capitol Hill recently, where they visited 77 congressional offices. The reason? Something called the Heavier Truck Pilot Project, an idea in Congress that would allow any state to increase truck weights up to 91,000 pounds for up to 10 years on its interstates. And when it comes to trucks that big, Casstevens has some very big concerns.
I'll start with the roadway safety issue reasons. Number one, common sense will tell you the more weight you add to a truck, the longer of a distance it takes to stop. That's number one. Now, the argument from the other side is, well, the proposal for 91,000 pounds would also require a 6th axle, and, gee, that'll be great because that'll help stop the truck. Okay, you're still overtaxing the braking system, the suspension system, and I've seen a lot of these aged trucks that are already out there, and what a lot of them have done is they've added a drop axle to their trailer so they can say, well, now I have 6 axles instead of 5. Anybody will tell you that that additional drop axle that's added to a truck that never had it to begin with doesn't carry as much weight, doesn't have the same stopping ability of the other axles. So that's part of it. But the other part is that this proposal to raise weights to 91,000 pounds is what they call a 10-year pilot project. Now, I don't know about you, but 10 years is not a pilot. 1 year is a pilot project, 10 years is permanent, because 5 years down the road, they're going to forget it was even a 10-year pilot project. So that's number one. But number two, they are essentially admitting that we don't have the studies to know if 91,000 pounds will be more dangerous. So let's just do it for 10 years and collect the data and see what happens. So what that's telling me from a highway safety perspective is we don't know how many more crashes we're going to cause. We don't know how many more people will get injured or killed. So let's just check those numbers for 10 years and really see how bad it is. That's a bad idea. That's using the motoring public as guinea pigs, and that's dangerous.
And it's also not entirely accurate. As Casstevens points out, there have been studies done to gauge the safety level of bigger trucks.
Correct. And even the U.S. DOT study that was, I think it was 2016 was the last one, concluded that their study concluded that an increase in truck weight would mean 47% increase in traffic crashes with these trucks with heavier weight. Well, there's a red flag right away. But also, what's glaringly missing is in the 20-plus years that I've been studying this, I have yet to see a single study that says heavier trucks are safer. Nobody will say that because it's not true. They are not safer. But nobody will come out and say it because there's never been a study to prove it. So why are we going to try to have a 10-year pilot project to gather numbers that we already know are going to be bad?
Safety concerns? Check. That's a big one for Casstevens and others like him, including OOIDA, the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, and the Truckload Carriers Association, all of which are strongly opposed to the idea. But safety isn't the only concern.
The other part of that argument is what people seem to be talking and dancing around is the infrastructure issue. Now, the National Association of County Engineers, this was a 2023 study, that said, essentially, if you increase truck weights to 91,000 pounds, there are over 72,000 bridges across the U.S. that will be affected, local bridges, at a cost of over $60 billion. Who is going to pay for that infrastructure damage, repair, and placement of these bridges? I'll tell you who it is. It's going to be your typical mom-and-pop motorist with higher fuel taxes. And the argument that I get from a lot of legislators members of Congress is they'll say, well, hang on, I've read this, and I've talked to the trucking industry that are proposing this increase, and they're saying this increase is only for federal highways. So why do you care about local bridges on county, state, municipal roads? And my answer is, when's the last time you've seen a semi-tractor trailer load or unload on the side of a federal highway? They don't. They have to exit. They all have to exit, and they'll go down that exit ramp, and they'll get on state highways and county highways and local highways to go make their deliveries. And every state, like my state in Illinois, has a law that says that these long-haul truckers can leave the federal highways for up to 5 miles in any direction for food, fuel, rest, repair, delivery, and pickup. Well, so they are going to be on local roads. They're going to be damaging local roads. They're going to be damaging local bridges. And again, these are local municipalities that are going to be paying for this damage.
The facts back up the feelings here, too. Earlier this year, the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks released a study indicating that increasing the maximum truck weight to 91,000 pounds would place up to 82,000 local bridges at risk, and the cost of replacing those bridges, at least $70 billion and as much as $98 billion. If you need more evidence that our roads aren't ready for the jump, we could turn to the American Society of Civil Engineers 2025 report card, which gave America's roads a D+ and its bridges a C. That hardly inspires confidence. So we've got valid concerns about safety and infrastructure backed by studies and, quite frankly, common sense. And yet, like the zombie in your chosen monster movie, the issue keeps coming back from the dead.
Why do you believe that increasing truck weights would make our roads more dangerous?
Bigger, heavier trucks.
Proposals to increase truck size.
The danger of heavier trucks.
Increasing truck weights.
Truck size and weight.
Increasing the size and weight of large trucks.
Increasing truck weight is making our workplaces less safe.
One question among many is why, if the research tells us this is a bad idea, does it keep coming back and in many cases picking up support?
Well, based on my research, bills like this, you tend to just follow the money. And it's typically pushed by, Shippers Coalition or the large companies like, FedEx, UPS, Amazon, et cetera. And, it stands to reason that if I own a truck or a trucking company and I have 50 trucks, if all those 50 trucks went out every day with 91,000 pounds instead of 80,000 pounds, of course I'm making more money. I'm sending out another 5.5 ton of product on every single truck that goes out. So of course that means more money. And the argument that I typically get from some of the members of Congress, because maybe somebody from the trucking industry has visited them before I got there, and they tell me things like, well, hang on, wouldn't it be a great idea if each truck could haul more weight because that would mean fewer trucks on the road? And wouldn't that be safer? To which I say, I've been in the business over 46 years, and I remember about 40 years ago when the law changed from 73,000 pounds to 80,000 pounds, and that was the argument then. If you let us carry 80,000 pounds, there'll be fewer trucks on the road because each truck can haul more product. If you check FMCSA's data every year for the past 25 years, total million miles traveled by heavy trucks has increased every year for 25 years. So that argument did not hold water 40 years ago. It doesn't hold water now. The other argument is, and this is the one I continue to hear, well, there's a massive truck driver shortage. We have to increase the weight on trucks so these companies can get their product delivered because there's a truck driver shortage. I've been hearing truck driver shortage for 40 years. And again, like you say, if you Google truck driver shortage, you're going to get both sides of the story. Is there really a shortage or is there not a shortage? ATA says, there's a shortage of 50, 60,000 truck drivers. But you can also Google the data that says there are over 400,000 new CDLs issued every year. Where are those drivers going? If there's 400,000 CDLs a year, every year, those drivers have to be going somewhere. So is it really the issue that you don't have enough drivers? Or is it the different issue that the drivers don't like the job for the variety of reasons? And again, I've talked to a lot of truck drivers. I know the issues involved. I know that this is not a typical 40-hour-a-week job. Truck drivers don't get overtime. They get paid by the mile, which means if they're sitting a day and a half somewhere waiting for a load, they are not making any money. And so I think it's a recruitment and retention issue, not a driver shortage issue.
And while knocking down the driver shortage myth is as difficult, if not more so, than the weight limit increase issue, Casstevens says it's very much worth the effort.
Most of the reaction we got were positive. There are some that, and a lot of them we talked to were freshman members of Congress, and so they're not familiar with previous bills of this nature. Some of the members who've been around a while are more familiar with it, and, every once in a while you'll get a situation where you're speaking with a member of Congress staffer, and you can tell they're looking at their watch and they're bored with what you have to say, and you're like, okay, well, this visit might be a lost cause, but the other 9 out of 10 were very positive.
As for how he foresees the near future on this effort?
Just because I struggle with the pessimist and the optimist in me, we've been able to hold off on increase in truck size and weights for a long time, but every year it seems to be more and more difficult to convince members of Congress to vote against it. I know Dusty Johnson is the one pushing this for the last couple of years, and, he's got a powerful voice. I think it's interesting when he calls it a modest increase in truck weight. That's his quote I've seen a couple of times. Moving from 80 to 91,000 pounds is a modest increase. I don't think 5.5 ton is modest. I think that word doesn't connect. But I'm hoping that when it comes down to, is this a who makes more money issue, or is this a roadway safety issue, I'm hoping the roadway safety issue carries the day, because that's really what concerns me.
Our thanks to Steve Casstevens of the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks there. Todd, a lot to unpack there, really, from what Steve talked about. But, with OOIDA stance, this really does come down to a safety issue above all else, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It sort of flies in the face of any kind of common sense and understanding that you make something bigger, you make it heavier, you make it more challenging to handle, maneuver, to operate on our roads that aren't getting bigger. They're not getting wider. They're plenty skinny, and most of the places where trucks have to go now, they're not getting bigger either. So truckers are still finding ways to deliver cargo in places where the facilities were built in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. These are challenging. And again, if you're talking about just the core, bigger, heavier, harder to operate in every kind of in the best weather, and trucks have to operate in every kind of weather.
Yeah,
it really makes no sense.
And to that point, you talk about common sense. I asked Steve there too. What does he think the motive is for this continued push? It keeps getting struck down. It keeps popping back up. What do you see as the motive for why this keeps returning?
Well, shippers.
Yeah.
Shippers are looking for be able to move more cargo for less money, and they always will. And the difference is that these folks, they're not concerned about the issues this creates for truckers, but they're not concerned about highway safety. They're not concerned about highway life, not concerned about bridge life or anything like that. They have one motive, and they're acting on that one motive, and we think that's pretty short-sighted.
Steve did mention OOIDA in our talk, and he gave a shout-out to the association, Louis in particular. And I want to play that, Todd, and after we come back, I want your reaction to what he said.
Okay.
Yeah, and what I think members of Congress find interesting, because they usually ask me if I don't volunteer, they say, well, how do the truck drivers feel about this? And it always makes me smile when I say, why don't you call the VP of OOIDA, because they'll tell you that the majority of the owner-operator independent drivers agree with us. It's a bad idea. They know it's unsafe, and the majority of them do not want to drive 91,000 pounds. And I think that kind of surprises them.
We don't have to call up the VP of OOIDA because we've got the president of OOIDA here. Yeah. What do truck drivers say about this?
It's a pretty dumb idea. Again, you're talking about making equipment bigger, heavier, more challenging in all of the times that you don't want it to be bigger and heavier and more challenging to operate. We have these yardbirds talking about this chronic driver shortage, and the problem is driver retention. And retention means people come to the job and then they leave. Well, part of the reason they leave is because basically it's not a good job in too many instances, and folks are doing their best to make it even more challenging, and that makes no sense.
Yeah. Why are we going to make it harder on them? And again, I think what you said earlier, too, going back to the reason, the motive being the almighty dollar, they're not thinking about individual truck drivers when they're
and there's more to it than that. I mean, if you're talking about the need to replace equipment, for the equipment to cost more money, and again, truckers have learned through the years is that there isn't any payback.
Yeah.
There isn't any payback.
Yeah.
So more and more and more say, wait a minute, we're big enough.
Why put our neck out there when you don't necessarily care about our neck, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Well, Todd, we want to say thank you and congrats on the well-deserved honors, the least of which, of course, is being the first guest on Trucking with OOIDA. So thank you so much for your time and all your hard work over the years.
Okay, well, glad to be part of this show and many more, hopefully.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with Trucking with OOIDA coming right up.
And welcome back to Trucking with OOIDA. Ashley, great talk with Todd per usual. It's nice to have a wealth of information and knowledge and wisdom about the trucking industry almost at arm's length.
One thing I notice about Todd, though, he will never say, I did this, I did that. He fully gives, props to the association, our members. Yeah. I mean, he definitely, gives them what they deserve. But yeah, he's a very humble guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how many deflections he had. If we were playing a sport or something, 2 or 3.
Many.
Yeah. Too many. Yeah. I mean, and I get that. And he really is. I mean, he's so dedicated to the association, dedicated to the trucking industry. And it comes through obviously in those conversations with him, but
it really does.
It's really, it's really a takeaway. And again, it's one of these things too, where, you can talk to him about old trucks. You can talk to him about emission standards, autonomous. I mean, he's obviously such a wealth of information. It's always good to talk to him for sure.
Yeah. We had a couple of stories that popped up recently that kind of caught our eye. This first one, if I saw the picture of it, out of Arizona, a brake shoe came loose from a semi-truck, went through the windshield of a car.
Nobody hurt.
Nobody hurt,
Good.
thankfully. Yeah. Driver wasn't hurt. Probably terrified, though.
Oh, for sure.
Covered in glass, but was okay otherwise. But yeah, Arizona Highway Patrol had posted a picture on Facebook. The car was on I-17. The brake shoe struck the windshield, went through the windshield. It kind of looks like a hook. I've never seen a brake shoe.
You have now.
I have now. Through a windshield.
And no, they're not sure how it happened, I think, right?
I don't think so, no.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just said nobody was hurt. Of course, this is immediate, and I actually saw a comment, Final Destination.
Right.
At its finest, that movie.
Was it the first one with the logging truck?
The logging
right?
truck, yeah. And I see, myself, if there's one movie from, the 90s, early 2000s that
probably
really
early 2000s,
stuck with people,
so.
It's do not drive behind a logging truck. And I'm curious if any logging truck drivers have noticed that cars slow down or switch lanes because of that.
Because of that movie.
Because of that movie.
Well, it had an effect on you, apparently.
It did, yeah. No, if I see a logging truck, I'm slowing way down.
It's probably great news for them. They don't have to worry about these little passenger cars buzzing by them.
Tailing them. Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What else? We had one of the carriers celebrated a birthday, I think, recently, right? Or
90 years. Schneider started with a single truck back in 1935. They just recently celebrated that really big birthday.
Yeah.
90 years.
Yeah. Well, we can celebrate that birthday by going to see the new Final Destination movie. I think there's
a new one coming out.
Either it's come out or it's coming out. I'm not sure if there's any, brake shoes or logs or I have seen one of the commercials and it did make me wince.
I feel like the logging truck was iconic. So I wonder if they'll, I don't know, throw another one.
Yeah, and that was like the opening scene, I think, for that.
Actually, yeah, I think it was
the opening scene. Like the very first scene for Final Destination was that movie. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to. Yeah, and I'm really curious too to hear what happened there, and it really does speak to pre-trip inspections. Although, would that be involved in a pre-trip inspection? Maybe that's a question for Todd.
I think it does happen.
Well, yeah, I guess it does happen. But yeah, fortunately, everybody's okay there in Arizona, and we'll find out what happens there and try to keep an eye on that, and we'll see what happens. Ashley, we've got one show in the books.
We're good.
We're good? Are we done?
We're done.
No, we've got more. We've got more coming. This is, kind of what we're going to hope to do, I think, over the course of this show is to kind of have a mix of, conversations, entertainment, obviously keep you informed here as we do everything. So there you go. Thanks for tuning in on the maiden voyage, Ashley.
I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to see what happens.
Well, stay tuned, and we'll have more Trucking with OOIDA next time. Today's episode of Trucking with OOIDA was brought to you by a dedicated team of people that includes Jim Fetzer, Keegan White, Tennille Flick, and Kim Boren.
Got thoughts? We'd love to hear them. Call us at 1-800-324-6856 and leave us a message. Or you can send us an email to podcast@ooida.com, and we might include it on the show.
Pushing back against the push for bigger trucks, battles are being won, but who's winning the war? Plus, the same could be said in the fight against EV mandates, but California isn't going down without a fight. And are diesel prices about to spike? Those stories and more, along with Todd Spencer, president of OOIDA, as an all-new Trucking with OOIDA starts now. Thanks for joining us on our maiden voyage. I'm Scott Thompson, one of your hosts.
And I'm Ashley Blackford, the other host.
We are excited to be doing this, excited to have you. We're going to be bringing you, our aim at least, is to bring you a mix of news and entertainment in the spirit of the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, of course, putting the issues that are really relevant to the trucking industry, which means are relevant to you front and center each and every time we speak with you. As mentioned, Todd Spencer, president of OOIDA, will be on the show a little bit later. We're also going to be talking about bigger trucks with Steve Casstevens of the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks as well. But right now, we're going to focus on some news that's out there, Ashley. And we had some big news last week that kind of is carrying over into this week as well.
Yeah, big news out of California. So last week, President Trump signed 3 resolutions that would essentially end the plan for strict vehicle emission standards for both cars and trucks. Now, this is out of California.
Yep.
The Advanced Clean Cars 2. So the plan for that was to ban sales of new internal combustion engine passenger vehicles by 2035. And for trucking, it would require 40% of Class 8 truck sales to be zero direct emission vehicles by model year 2032. So the way Trump went about this in his first term is not how he's going about it this term.
Yeah.
He's using the Congressional Review Act that would essentially permanently end this.
We think.
In his press
More
conference,
on that later, yeah.
He was very set that, there's nothing they can do. There's no going back on this. It's done. It's finished. Well, California said, hold up.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
They're not going to give up without a fight.
Which I think we expected.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, they weren't going to just say, okay.
But the governor's essentially saying that they're going to file lawsuits and kind of take this to the courts as well, right?
Yes.
And I think there's a question as to whether that's going to work, but they're going to try it anyways, which I don't think is a surprise here.
Something else that was interesting of note that back in July of 2023, so about 2 years ago, there was a partnership formed between several truck manufacturers, engine manufacturers, with the California Air Resources Board, or CARB, because we love an acronym here in trucking.
Yep.
And they essentially just signed something saying, you know what, we're going to do this. We're going to follow these standards no matter what happens. Legally, from the government, we've got this. So the question is now, are they going to follow through? A colleague of ours, Tyson Fisher, has reached out to all of them. We have heard back from PACCAR, who declined to comment. And so we'll wait to hear back from the others just to see what they're doing and keep you up to date.
This is one of these things, too, that I'm curious when we have Todd in here to ask him about, too, because this obviously has been a big issue for a number of years now. And it seems, at least to me, that this is a problem that the free market is eventually going to figure out, probably. But, you know, we're kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit here. It seems like with regard to California and these emission standards, and we'll see how these lawsuits pan out. Yeah. I'm no legal expert. I don't think you are either.
No, definitely not.
But it seems like it might be on shaky ground. But yeah, I will be following this, obviously, as that it kind of goes along the process. But California vowed late last week to fight this in court. So we'll keep an eye on that for sure.
Now, another story we're keeping an eye on to see what's happening between Iran and Israel. Scott, I know this could have an impact here in the United States, especially in the trucking industry. Yeah,
I don't think either one of us are going to speculate on where this might be headed. It doesn't look like it's heading anywhere good, but obviously we'll see how this kind of plays out. But we can speculate, I think, on what effect this might have on fuel prices, namely on diesel prices. I guess this kind of really depends on what Iran does, and they really do hold the cards in I guess in terms of that aspect of this, because they could, if things get really bad for them, target energy infrastructure. They could target U.S. military personnel. Those two things alone could spike prices. They could also, if they wanted to, and I think this would be kind of maybe a final straw for them, but they could, disrupt oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. And if they do that, I think watch out. I think you're looking at probably a pretty big spike there with diesel prices and fuel prices. Worth mentioning, this is kind of based on somewhat, I guess, recent history, obviously, with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. If you remember, I think it was about 3 years ago, this summer, actually, diesel prices spiked shortly after the invasion there. I think the prices hit like a record of $5.70, somewhere in that neighborhood in the summer of 2022. So with people out there struggling with the cost of operations, obviously already being high, this is something that could throw another monkey wrench in this recovery as we kind of wait for it to transpire here. Obviously fuel surcharges can help with some of this if those fuel prices go up. We've seen them inching up a little bit, I think, in the past couple weeks. Yeah. I can't remember specifically how much, not a lot, maybe a cent or two here or there. But we have seen some of these experts out there that are, very worried about what this could mean with, the price of oil and fuel prices and everything else. So worth monitoring. There is the Strategic Petroleum Reserve that, if you remember, then President Biden tapped into when all that was going on with Russia and Ukraine. That is an option for President Trump this time around. I think I saw some comment that they're ready for that event if it should happen. So there are some things out there that could help ease the situation. But for now, all eyes on Iran and Israel, which again are really scaling up their conflict there, and we're all just kind of watching to wait and see what happens. Yeah.
Another story we have been looking into, Texas Department of Transportation put out a release last week saying that they were hit by a cyber attack. More than 300,000 crash reports were downloaded illegally. Now, the issue here, of course, with a crash report, you have names, addresses, insurance information, license numbers. This kind of, we've heard of many of these. It kind of speaks to the issue of how much information is too much information, and just the dangers of it being online. I know over the past few months, probably over the past year, a lot of talk.
Feels like years.
It does feel like years.
Yeah.
The Beneficial Ownership Information, BOI, of course.
Another acronym.
Another acronym. That would require small businesses to provide information about themselves, their companies, which of course then leads to the worry that, okay, if there's an attack like this, on them, that information getting out. You would assume the government would have good virus protection software, anti-whatever. But if it can happen to them, I mean, it can happen to anybody.
Yeah.
And so, there is some worries out there.
Well, that's what I thought of when I saw this too, was the beneficial information, situation. And that was a concern that we saw in some comments too, was, how much information do you need from me? Especially if you're an owner operator, you're a small business, you're not, you're not harboring terrorists, and there's already so much information, as you pointed out, that's already out there. How much more do they need, especially when you see cyber attacks like this? China hacked the Treasury Department, I think it was late last year, and got a bunch of information. So those concerns are warranted. And again, we keep seeing these cyber attacks over and over and over again. It really is scary because there's so much information out there that they can do a lot of harm with. So we'll keep an eye on that as well, for sure. One thing, and we're going to have Todd up here in a moment to talk about a number of things. So I'm going to ask you this question, Ashley, not just out of randomness, but we're going to be asking him and talking to him about his attendance at the American Truck Historical Society. They had their show up in Madison, Wisconsin recently. So we were kind of thinking about old trucks. I was thinking about old cars. I've never owned a truck, but what was your first car? First vehicle?
First car, I got it in college. A Honda Accord that I named Stacy.
Oh, you had a name for it.
Oh, of course.
See, I didn't name mine.
Oh, gosh, no. And the memories.
Yeah.
She's obviously long gone.
Was it a clunker or was it a?
No, I don't think it was. I mean, actually, well, my husband would probably say yes, it was a clunker. I don't think it was. It was my first car. I was very proud of it, and yeah.
Yeah, you probably have me beat. I had an '85 Plymouth Reliant that belonged to my mother before it belonged to me. But I think for the most part, people love I mean, they have, fond feelings about it because I think of all the things that you are doing, with the car.
I don't think mine was that old.
Okay.
So, yeah.
You have me beat.
Not in clunker territory here.
Yeah. And again, I think this is a question that we're talking about now because we're going to be talking about old trucks. We're going to be talking with Todd Spencer, who had an old truck, I would assume, at one point. So I'm kind of curious as to what he's going to say there. But we got a lot of show here, and we do want to mention if people want to reach out to us, we've got a way to do that, right?
Yeah. If you want to give us a call on our hotline, 1-800-324-6856. If you want to tell us about your first truck, if you have any story ideas, we'd love to hear from you. Or if you'd rather send an email, podcast@ooida.com.
Yeah, please do write us, call us. We'll possibly include that on the show. We're going to take a quick break right now, but Todd Spencer is up right after this break.
Welcome back to Trucking with OOIDA. We have OOIDA President Todd Spencer in studio with us. Todd, how's it going?
Hey, great. Every day's a great day.
Great to have you as well.
Now, Scott and I were just talking about our first cars, and we were curious, what was your first truck?
Going back a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to say a Rough Rider, baby. It was a 1972 white, I think it was a white 4000 cab over. And, I said a Rough Rider. It had a Hendrickson spring suspension, and it was one of those kinds of trucks that the only way to really make the ride better would be put more weight on it. It was a heavy hauler truck.
Yeah, so, no bells and whistles on those.
What? When you say bells and whistles, I mean, it predates even bells and whistles. There was no power steering. Yeah. None of the creature comforts that are typical today. It had an AC in it, but it only worked in the shop.
That didn't do you much good.
Once you left the repair facility where you left a few $100s short, air conditioner would quit. So after a while, I just wore out on that.
Do you I mean, I know a lot of people romanticize their first car, their first truck. Do you romanticize that? Do you miss that at all?
Not in the least. Not in the least, nor about the one that replaced it. Look, the equipment that we have to work with today is just so much nicer in every way imaginable. And I think, back in my early days, obviously I was as tough as any trucker out there, and we all thought we were pretty tough. Mm-hmm. But heat and things like that stuff it'll take it out of you.
Yeah.
So, and the simplest things, if it were hot at night, well, you got to roll the window down. You roll the window down. In lots of areas of the country, the mosquitoes are going to eat you up. And,
just the rattling, right? I mean,
well, yeah,
that too, right? It all takes a toll.
Well, sure,
yeah.
So and things like insulation in cabs and things like that. There just wasn't much of that.
Yeah, these kids today, they don't know how good they got it, right?
Well, look, it's still a challenging job.
Oh, for sure.
It's a hard job. You need to know what you're doing, and obviously, but being as comfortable as you can make it is it's a pretty good investment in you.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, different time for sure.
Now, speaking of old trucks, you recently visited the American Truck Historical Society show. That was held in Madison, Wisconsin this year. Louis Pugh, the executive VP, he says it's one of his favorite shows. How do you enjoy this show?
Oh, I think it's a cool place. It's a good show to go to simply because you get to talk to lots of truckers that basically have pretty much seen and been through it all. And, have an appreciation for equipment. And the curious thing about it is, we'll all face challenges in our life, but these are folks that generally remember the positive things, and that's good. Those are the things that ought to stick with you. And some of the stuff that wasn't so nice, well, forget it, leave it in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that at the truck show. And again, if you like equipment, it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. Do any, I guess it kind of varies by year too, but is there a particular truck that you see at the American Truck Historical Society that makes you think, man, this one's really cool?
Well,
they're all cool.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
There are a lot of them. And for me, I think back to the things that, we would sort of fantasize about back then that probably didn't make like taking a B-61 Mac and putting a 1693 Cat in it. Well, you would have had the toughest truck that was ever made. And when I say tough, it wouldn't be tough, but it wouldn't be all that practical in lots and lots of uses. So now I never had the kind of cash that I really wanted to spend on doing something like that.
Have you done when you were out there every day? Did you customize any of your trucks very much?
For me, I would certainly be willing to invest in the equipment, but everything I invested in the equipment in would be basically either making it more efficient or less likely to break down or things like that. The investments that actually have a return on investment, that's going to be money well spent in most instances.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, we should mention you were honored at this year's event with the ATHS Golden Achievement Award, given to people involved in trucking for 50 or more consecutive years. Now, this can't be true. If 50 years at your age, that doesn't, the numbers don't math there, do they?
Well,
it goes by fast.
There are a lot of numbers that don't map out real well. But having said that, basically, that's a recognition for having stuck around.
Yeah.
And when it comes to advocacy like OOIDA has done through all of these years. It really is an achievement because, when OOIDA was formed in 1973, it wasn't the only organization. There were like 250 others started at the same time, and there have been hundreds since then that have formed, and by guys that well-meaning that thought they had better ideas and better approaches and would be better at doing everything. And after a while, if they do much of anything, they realize some of these things are really, really, there's a lot more to it than I thought.
Yeah.
And if we're actually going to be able to pull this off, we're going to have to be committed for a long time and make an investment, monetary and in time and resources and things like that. And it ain't easy. So, they're gone.
I hear you talking, and I think, OOIDA staying power obviously is a it's a big thing. It's important, and the association's done a lot of important things over the years. And I know, being someone that doesn't like to toot their own horn, you kind of deflected what Ashley asked you there. But I'm wondering, if you've had a chance over all these years to kind of sit back and reflect on everything that you've contributed to the industry, right? Because the association obviously has been instrumental in a number of things, but at the helm, we had Jim Johnston and you, and between the two of you, you've done a lot of things. Have you had a chance to kind of sit back and think, this has been pretty cool. I've done some things.
Well, that's true, and of course, I should point out that among the most important things is perseverance. You got to stick with it. The message has got to be consistent. It's got to be truthful. And you have to recognize realities and be willing to work within those realities. And for me as a trucker, way back in the 70s, I recognized the need for advocacy or professionalism on the part of truckers. This is a group of people that are basically generally underrepresented. And, there needs to be more for them. OOIDA is an opportunity for them for all the hundreds of thousands. We've got a couple of million drivers.
Yeah.
Basically to make a small investment in their own future, because most of the things that we're doing on behalf of truckers, no one else is going to do.
Yeah.
So, and we're not going to be able to get this done next week. But there will be a time when there will be an opportunity to get it done, but only if if people have bought in, that are basically recognize the need for positive changes to be made and to be able to invest in those.
Yeah, got to stick with it.
Take pride in what you're doing.
Yeah. He deflected again, Ashley.
We'll let it go this time.
All right, fine.
I do want to talk about the connection, with Dave Nemo back in March at the Mid-America Trucking Show. I know you sat down with Dave, and Scott, I know you recorded that, kind of just a chit-chat of you guys. We didn't know then that we were going to have this partnership. Yeah. But you guys, go way back. Talk to me about the connection with Dave and, him being the voice of trucking radio.
Well, listen, I became, I won't say acquainted, but certainly aware of Dave Nemo when I was in the Army. And I was stationed at Fort Gordon, Georgia. And, in the Army, your hours can be kind of unpredictable. And I'd be listening to the radio at night, and I hear this program, and they're plugging the Oak Grove truck stop.
You thought, hey.
And I thought, I'll be darned.
Yeah.
I know where that is.
Yeah. It's not far from where you grew up, right?
Well, actually, I grew up a quarter of a mile from that truck stop.
Yeah.
And I don't live but about 2 miles from it right now. So, but at any rate, he's plugging this, and I think, well, that's from right back at home. And then, I like the programming. I like the conversation. I started paying more attention, and he's on every night. And I thought, well, that's kind of like a voice from home. And if you listen to Dave, he has a following. He has an audience, and he's great with people. He identified well with drivers, and there's lots of similarities between drivers and veterans. And again, it's kind of like having a friend in the night.
Sure.
So. Well, no matter where you are.
And we were talking about staying power earlier, and you were talking about the importance of OOIDA sticking, grasping onto an issue, and not letting go, right? And having that staying power over the past several decades. I mean, the same could be said of Nemo. He's not where he is now by accident, right? I mean, he's very good at what he does.
Sure.
And he, as you said, is a voice for a lot of truckers out there.
Well, a friend in the night.
Yeah.
So
now a friend in the morning.
Yeah.
And the day.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, sure.
Yeah.
Whenever.
Yeah. Whenever.
And the other thing that's always interesting about trucking, and maybe more things now, but I mean, you can have friendships from all over.
Yeah.
Friendships from all over. I mean, maybe folks that you see or hear from, maybe there's a year or two before it happens, but they're friends.
That's a great point and a great way to look at it.
All over.
We now, with all the technology, we have these, Zoom calls with people that we quote unquote work with from all over the United States, or we don't really necessarily know them, but with truck drivers, especially then, right? And especially now too, I guess, right?
Well,
you're doing the same thing. And
yeah, but I mean, it was actually even better then, because I mean, you would have, through the decades now, truckers would have friends from all over the country that they actually would interact with periodically.
Yeah.
And not like through Zoom.
Right, exactly. That's my point. And now the reunions, it really still has kind of the same feel as it did back then, right? Because you're still, meeting people and shows.
At shows and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. It's really cool.
I want to touch on some recent news. President Trump last week signed off on resolutions that essentially end California's vehicle emission regulations, including the one for heavy-duty trucks. Talk to me about OOIDA's stance on this. I know this is something that we've discussed in the past.
Well, listen, regardless of where you may be on the emissions topic and things like that. Now, I have enough experience dealing with in California. I can remember what the air was like in California in the late 60s.
Not great.
Absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Truckers have been significant contributors to cleaning up that air through these decades. And, we're not opposed, nor I don't think anybody driving a truck is opposed to improvements in technology, and certainly EVs are certainly an improvement in technology, but are in instances where they make sense. And the frustration that we've had with basically arbitrary timelines is the timelines and the technology haven't really meshed very well at all. Certainly thousands and thousands and thousands of truckers have basically had their lives, had their futures ended with emission regulations, with the DEF stuff and things like that. Well, I should say even prior to that,
right.
Emission systems that just simply wouldn't hold up. And, because they were basically put out there before they really made sense.
Yeah.
And we don't want regulations to be the determining factor whether or not you survive as a small business. People will eagerly embrace what makes sense. So let's find the applications that make sense and move in those directions without arbitrary decisions that say this applies to everything.
Yeah. And today's diesel engines, are far cleaner than they used to be.
Oh, sure.
And they're going to be around for a while.
Well, yeah. And again, that doesn't mean that that's the only technology that we need or that we can rely on. But as other technologies improve, it only makes sense that they're going to play a bigger role. And that's something that, again, for anybody that does transportation for a living, whatever will do the job that makes the most sense for the right amount of money, hey, let's go that way.
And the free market's going to figure this out. I mean, that's usually the way these things go, right?
As you said, with incentives and things like that. And there really isn't any way to address a lot of issues other than through incentives.
Right.
And that's the way we ought to be going.
Yeah. We've seen the carrot, the stick approach. California's trying the stick approach here. We'll see how it plays out in the courts, but it's one of these things that putting the cart before the horse doesn't usually work for you. And that's what California's trying to do here, it looks like. But yeah. Todd, can you hang out for a moment here? Because we got to go to a quick break here. But when we come back, speaking about trucks and maybe putting the cart before the horse, we've seen this push for bigger trucks for quite a while now. We've seen some new movement on this. The fight continues there. We spoke with Steve Casstevens of the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks. We're going to listen to him here in a moment, and I want to get your feedback as well. But we'll be right back right after this.